Coffee. How to brew coffee at home. That sweet, sweet beverage that ritualistically begins many of our mornings. And if it doesn't, that's fine too, I guess. You take some ground coffee, some hot water, you mix it together, and you have something nice to sip on. It's kind of not that easy. It's not country time lemonade, although a lot of us treat it that way. There are so many factors in how to brew a good cup of coffee that it can be a little overwhelming sometimes. So today I'm going to give you a quick little walkthrough on how I brew coffee at home. I'm going to try to keep it so it's not too nerdy, but first I'd like to share a story. So that's me in the middle, playing the upright bass. I used to pursue a career as a musician in the Bay Area, and if it weren't for one specific cup of coffee, I would likely still be playing music. And all it really took for me was, I guess, that cup of coffee. Drinking coffee was not necessarily a passion of mine, but if you're a musician, you have to practice a lot for a very long period of time. And if you play jazz, you're playing typically into the wee hours in the morning, a lot later than I'd like to be up. So I drank a lot of coffee, and I didn't really consider what coffee tasted like. I always assumed it was this bitter, black sludge that was just kind of gross, but I was in it for the caffeine. I feel like that's where a lot of people are. But for me, it only took one gig playing for free coffee and tips to make me change my tune from music to coffee. That first free cup of coffee that I had, it shattered any kind of preconceived notion that I had of what coffee should taste like. It was sweet, bright, balanced, acidic. They had these really wild flavor notes of jasmine, cherry, caramel, lemon. And I honestly thought the coffee was artificially flavored, but that wasn't the case. And this is actually a fairly common experience for most coffee professionals. So I wanted to find out who roasted that coffee, and I did. I found other roasters throughout the Bay Area that had a similar roasting profile. Sold nearly all of my instruments so I could just buy books on coffee and learn more about coffee. And then I dropped out of school and joined the Specialty Coffee Association of America, which is a trade organization for coffee professionals. And that kind of launched my career path as a professional barista, and music more or less became a hobby. And I really can't complain because I got this amazing cat apron, and I think I look fantastic in it, and I think it's cute, so haters gonna hate. Anyway, so I want to give you just kind of a basic walkthrough of the tools necessary to brew coffee at home and kind of the methodology that I take to brewing a cup of coffee. There's so many different coffee brewers on the market. It's a little overwhelming at times. But I know that if I want to have the best cup of coffee, I need to brew it manually. And so more often than not, I gravitate towards these little pour-over drippers that you might, or maybe you haven't seen, I don't know. And that's kind of how I start out, is with that cute little dripper called a Kalita Wave. I'll grab my glass carafe to catch my coffee while it brews. And then one of my favorite tools is a scale and a timer. The use of a scale and a timer is going to help create a repeatable brewing experience and a consistent brewing experience. For me, the more information that I can collect while I'm brewing my cup of coffee is just going to get me closer to that perfect cup of coffee, if such a thing really exists. And I would say all too often, I wouldn't say it's a frustration, but it's a little frustrating. People ask me how much caffeine is in my cup of coffee or your cup of coffee or whatever it might be. And all I can say is it's kind of arbitrary. It depends on the mass ratio in which you're using to brew your coffee. When we're talking about mass ratios, it might sound a little weird, but there's this thing called Google or the internet that you can find out what that is. What that means is I'm using a coffee to water ratio. So if I have 1 part of coffee, I'll use 14 parts of water. If I want a stronger cup of coffee, if I want a weaker cup of coffee, I'll use 1 part of coffee to 17 parts of water. And it all depends on how you want to scale that. It doesn't really matter. But it helps create a consistent cup. And then my beautiful little gooseneck kettle, so I have control over how I add my water to my coffee. It's very important. And filtered water. I can't emphasize enough how important filtered water is. What comes out of your tap might actually be drinkable, but it's horrible for coffee brewing. I can say it's just really not good. Coffee grinders. For me, a coffee grinder, I want as consistent of a grind size as possible. If you've ever seen those blade grinders, they're horrible. Seriously, just throw it away or maybe use it for spices or something. For your coffee grinding, it's not great. And then how fine do you grind your coffee? Or how coarse do you grind your coffee? There's no way that you can possibly know unless you have your time fixed and that mass ratio fixed. If you don't have either of those fixed, specifically the mass ratio, you can really never quite approximate it. That little drip sign that you see on grinders, it's slightly arbitrary, honestly. So this is my home setup. When I'm going to start brewing coffee, I'll get all this out, make it look pretty, supposedly, and then I'll grab my filtered water, get in my kettle, put it on my induction range, and start bringing it up to a boil. Here in Coeur d'Alene, boiling point is 208 degrees Fahrenheit, which is fantastic for coffee brewing if you like more of a light roasted coffee. So while my water is coming up to temperature, I'm going to wet my coffee filter. I don't want any of these kind of nasty, papery flavors that are going to get into my coffee from that paper filter, so I want to rinse them out. And then I want to grind my coffee fresh for each batch that I'm brewing. Like with most things, I would say, fresher is always better. So once everything is prepped and ready to go, my water is up to the correct temperature, I've ground my coffee grounds. I'm going to set everything on my scale. I'm going to tear out my scale. I'm going to start my timer. And I'm going to slowly add water onto my coffee grounds over the duration of my coffee brewing. You can't just dump water into coffee and expect it to taste good. I can't emphasize this enough. It's not country time lemonade. It's really not that simple. And if you think it is, maybe you should drink something else. I don't know, or just not care. So while I'm brewing my coffee, I want to have as much control over how I'm adding my water. So that's why I use that gooseneck kettle. And then the duration of my brewing time, what is that? It's going to depend on the actual coffee. So if I have a darker roasted coffee, I know I want to have a slightly shorter brew time. If I have a lighter roasted coffee, I want a longer brew time. And this is a fixed variable that I'm going to have before I actually start brewing. So after I'm done brewing, whatever time that might be, I'm going to set my dripper aside, and I'm going to stir my coffee, which might sound a little weird, but if we think of how we're extracting all these tasty little solubles from our coffee grounds, they don't come out evenly necessarily. It's all kind of spread throughout the beverage unequally. So I'm going to stir my coffee. And then I'm going to sit down with that beautiful little coffee time cup with the cute bears, and I'm going to sip that coffee as it cools. Ideally, if I did a good job while I was brewing, that coffee should get better as it cools. In every cup of coffee that I make, either for myself or for a customer, in some way, either consciously or unconsciously, I'm trying to recreate that initial cup of coffee that really got me into coffee. And like I said before, if it weren't for that one cup of coffee, I would still be playing music. I'm so grateful for that experience. Coffee has taken me all over the world. I've gotten to meet, and I continue to meet, and I've worked and continue to work with amazing people that continue to challenge me, and it just makes me grow as a person. I've learned to really have a deep passion, not only for coffee, but its related subjects, be it chemistry, physics, botany, ecology, environmental science. And those are all subjects I couldn't even conceive of thinking about seriously as a musician, to be honest. More importantly, I like to serve people. I have a real passion for serving people. I want to make everybody's day just that much better and enrich all of your lives in some way, even if it's just through, say, like a cup of coffee, because to me, it's not just a cup of coffee, it's a cup of coffee. Thank you.